you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, have a seat. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Christopher Wayne Farris.
Chris, how is it that you know the defendant in this case?
She's my mother.
And I want to go into a little bit about the background of your family.
Okay.
When did you move to Georgia?
2005.
Where did you
Excuse
move?
me, 1995, sorry.
Okay. Is it fair to say you're a little nervous?
I'm a little nervous.
Okay.
I mean, it's my first time on this trial, so.
Sure.
And move the microphone in front of you, and if you'll just talk over it, you don't have to talk into it.
Okay, great.
So is that 1995 you said?
Yes, 1995.
And where did you move from?
Hoover, Alabama, suburb of Birmingham.
A suburb of Birmingham.
Correct.
How old were you?
15.
And do you have siblings?
Yes.
Okay. And how old were your siblings when you moved?
My brother would have been 12. My brother Scott. My sister Emily. I should probably know this, but I would say 5 or 6, and then Amanda would have been, she's the youngest, would have been around, I guess, 4 or 5.
Why did you move here from Alabama in 1995?
My father came to open the Atlanta office for Barton Foreman, his law firm.
How long had he been with Barton Foreman when you moved here in 1995?
So about 5 or 6 years, I would imagine. So that was yep, about that.
Were you around when Gary went to law school?
I was.
How old were you?
Well, I started kindergarten when he started law school, so
5 or 6?
5 or 6, yeah, correct.
So you got to see him work through law school?
I did.
And how was that?
It was great. I mean, from what I remember, I mean, he used to take me to the law school and we'd play laser tag, and when he would work security, he had a job working security, so I had a lot of, for a little kid, a big law school to run around in, it was, it was fun.
So in law school, did he also work for Barton Foreman?
I think he clerked with them in the summer, from what I remember.
Okay, and then in 1995, he came here to open the Atlanta office for Barton Foreman.
Correct.
Okay. Did Gary like his job?
Absolutely, yes.
And when you moved here, what city did you move to? In Georgia?
Alpharetta, Georgia.
What school did you end up going to? What high school?
Milton High School.
Okay. And after high school, what did you do?
Went to the University of Alabama.
For how long?
I left there in 2002, so it would have been 3.5, 4 years.
Did you eventually come back to Georgia?
I did.
Okay. What did you do after that?
I had like a job at a local restaurant, and then I met my first wife right around then.
When you were working at the restaurant, did you live at the home in Alpharetta, or did you live somewhere else?
When I was working at the restaurant, I lived at home.
At home. And so you said then you met your first wife.
Mm-hmm.
What was her name?
Kendall Lee.
Okay. And how long were you with Kendall Lee?
Well, we eventually got married and had 2 children, and we separated in 2007.
What are your children's names?
Ella Grace and Addison Marie.
When were they born?
Ella was born September of 2004, Addison August of 2006.
Okay. Once they were born, did you guys ever leave Georgia?
Oh yeah, about a couple weeks after Ella, the oldest, was born, we moved to Maine.
How long were you in Maine for?
So that would have been 2004, about 3 years.
I want to go back to your parents and their background a little bit. We talked about Gary's job. What did your mom do when she was, when Gary was in law school?
Homemaker, took care of us, took care of the house.
Kept her busy. There were 4 of you.
Correct, yes.
And when you were in Alabama, did you guys have family around?
Oh yeah.
Who was around?
Both sets of grandparents, my aunt, both aunts, my uncle. They were in Tuscumbia, Muscle Shoals area.
And is that where you were before coming to Alpharetta in 1995? Muscle Shoals area?
No, I was in Hoover. Muscle
Okay.
Shoals is the northwest corner of Alabama. So we were, from Tuscaloosa, which is where he attended the University of Alabama Law School, then went to work for Burr & Foreman, which was in Hoover. Well, it was in Birmingham. We lived in Hoover, and then we moved to Alpharetta in 1995.
And all of your family stayed in Alabama, essentially. The family you just mentioned.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Did you learn when you were in Alabama a lot about how your parents grew up?
Absolutely, yes.
And who did you learn that information from?
I would say both of them. My father would talk all the time about his growing up and things he would do, and my mother would talk about it as well.
What would your mother share with you about her upbringing?
Mentioning how they lived in Nashville for a time, and working at the hardware store in Muscle Shoals, and that's what really comes to mind at first.
So you mentioned a hardware store. Tell the jury a little bit about that.
So my grandfather owned an Ace Hardware store in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and I really enjoyed going there as a child. It was great. You could run around and play and build things with the little tools and the wood and the little woodworking things. And I always enjoyed getting up with my grandfather and going to Burger King or McDonald's for breakfast. I got a big kick out of that, and it was a great time. And I really enjoyed. My grandfather was a huge Alabama football fan, and he loved to talk about football, and so I always would enjoy people coming in to talk to him about the football team, and I think that's kind of where my love for football in Alabama kind of came from, as well as my father.
And when you mentioned this grandfather, are you talking about Melody's dad?
Yes,
And the one who owned the Ace Hardware store?
that is correct.
Okay. Was he a hunter as well?
Carl? No, not that I ever knew.
Did he own guns?
Yes.
About how many guns did he own?
I don't know how many. I know he would take us to shoot, 22 rifles at this outside of town, and it was like a rock quarry. So I know of those, and then I knew of. I remember when we would go do that, he would shoot some pistols, but I would not know how many guns he owned.
Sure. Did Melody grow up shooting guns?
I don't know that.
And do you know what happened to Carl eventually?
Yeah, I know. Yes, I do.
Okay, can you share with the jury?
He had a heart attack and was in ICU for a pretty long time. I assume ICU for I think a week or two at least before he eventually passed away.
What year was that?
It would be 2007, 1997. I apologize. These 2000s and the 90s get me. 1997. He actually suffered a heart attack on my 17th birthday.
Okay. You were already here in Georgia when
We
he
were.
passed.
That is correct.
Okay. I want to move along a little bit and jump ahead to your parents' marriage.
Okay.
At what point did you learn that your parents had a little bit of a rough marriage?
Not until the late 2000s, 2008, 2009, after I had moved back from Atlanta, or moved back from Maine back to Atlanta.
Okay, so you and Kendall Lee had moved to Maine and you had already moved back.
Yeah,
for
I
that.
moved back, yes,
Okay.
correct.
What caused you to learn about the trouble in their marriage?
My father told me.
Okay, when was that?
I would say late 2008 to early 2009 is when I first got wind of that from him.
Why did he share that with you?
I don't really know why he did. Why he initially started sharing things like that with me, but once he did, he continued to share things like that with me.
And you said that was in the late 2000s?
Correct.
And did he continue to share those troubles with you up until he died?
Oh, yes, 100%.
At any point, did you learn about your mother's relationship with Ted Wiley?
Yes.
When did you learn about that?
Well, the dates, I'm not quite sure. I want to say, suspicion-wise, probably somewhere around late 2008, 2009. And then when there was an incident with financially, when it was really like brought to the forefront.
You mentioned suspicion.
Yeah.
What caused suspicion to you?
Well, I think what my dad told me is he was kind of suspicious. My brother, I believe, was the one who kind of initially had those suspicions. But my suspicion, I always thought Ted Wiley was just a little bit too, I don't know, like, I guess maybe flirtatious with my mother.
Who is Ted Wiley?
Ted Wiley was actually in a relationship with my Aunt Sherry.
Did
For
you
years.
Did you know him personally?
Oh yeah, he'd been around for a long time. I remember I was a child, not that old, and maybe 7 or 8 years old, and that's when I don't remember the dates, but I was young.
So you knew of Ted Wiley long before any, as you say, suspicions of Ted and your mother.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
How well did you know him? Would you hang out with him, have conversations with him?
Oh yeah, he was very friendly. I remember, Christmases, we would always go to Christmas at my grandparents, Mama and Papa, which is my father's parents. Every year, Ted would be there, and he'd bring a football, and we'd, throw the football around, and he was always very kind, and he was a funny guy. He was part of the family.
Did you see Ted and Melody around each other in the late 2000s?
Yes.
Did you see them interact with one another?
Yes.
And did anything stand out to you at that time?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
I had ridden up to Florence, Alabama with my mother. I was actually picking up a vehicle that was my grandmother's, and we stayed at Ted's house, and he was sitting next to my mother. I was laying on the couch. Can't remember if I was still watching TV or if I was kind of in and out of drifting off to sleep. And I remember Ted and my mother sitting next to each other, and I just kind of thought it was just weird and uneasy. But this was actually November of 2008. So now that I think about that, yeah, it was November 2008. So I think that would probably be when my suspicions really began to arise.
And how did you know, how were your suspicions confirmed?
I was
years.
living in Buckhead with my ex-wife Jenna, and my father told me, he's like, I need you to come up to Alpharetta tonight and have dinner with me. I said, okay. He said, meet me at Outback Steakhouse at the corner of Jones Bridge, Stage Bridge, and Alpharetta. And he sat me down and he said, Chris, I don't think we're going to be able to have Christmas this year. And he began to explain that, why we wouldn't. He told me that my mother had withdrawn, I believe, $50,000 from a home equity line of credit without his knowing about it, and he told me, I don't know if we're going to be able to have Christmas this year because of this.
Who was at that dinner?
I think it was, I know I was there, and I think one of my sisters, I think Amanda was there too, but I can't be sure about that.
What year was that?
Oh, that's a good question. It would have either been Christmas, right before Christmas of 2009. If I had to guess, that would be it. But it's been so long, I don't know the exact year.
And what happened after that? Between your father and mother?
Well, I know he filed for divorce.
How do you know about that?
Well, I got wind of it because I had stopped at the house in Alpharetta to use the restroom because I had a job where I drove around a lot. And I would stop in to use the restroom and or say hello. It's my parents' house. And I come to the door, and the door's open, and my sister's black lab is running around in the front yard, and there's a lady at the front trying to, what I come to find out very soon after that is serving her divorce papers. I called my father and I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I'm serving your mother with divorce papers. And that's how I found out.
And when was that? What year was that?
I would say either 2010 or 2011. I would, if I had to say, I would say probably 2010.
And where was your mom at the time?
She had locked herself in an upstairs bedroom and refused to come out to talk, I guess to avoid getting served.
At any point, did your mom leave your dad?
Can you clarify what leave means?
Leave the house for a significant period of time?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
She would leave and be up in Florence, Alabama for months at a time. Weeks, sometimes months.
How did you know where she was going?
My father would tell me.
Was that around the same time as the Ted Wiley
Yes.
affair? Okay.
Mhm.
Is that what prompted your dad to file divorce papers?
Yes.
Did they end up getting divorced?
No.
Do you know what happened?
She came home. He called me one day and said, she's coming home. I want you to forgive your mother and accept her back.
And did you do that?
I told him I would. But I would say I gave it my best try.
I want to go back a little bit to when you mentioned you moved to Maine.
Sure.
And you have two daughters, and did you have both at the time you moved to Maine, or just
No,
one?
that was 2 weeks after Ella was born. Ella's my oldest daughter.
Okay, and why'd you move to Maine?
Well, because we didn't have any money, and my wife, the mother of my children's parents, had a house in Maine on Lake Sebago, this beautiful house, and they said, hey, come live up here. And I had visited Maine a couple times, and I was all for it.
How did your parents react to that move?
They weren't happy about it. My mother was not happy, and my father, he understood, but if I had to say, I don't think he was happy about it.
Prior to moving, well, you ended up having Addison in Maine?
Yes.
And did your mom come up and help out with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
She was very supportive.
Oh yeah,
and
she was
helpful.
great. Mm-hmm.
And she's always been supportive with your daughters,
Yes, very,
as was your dad.
very much so.
They love your daughters.
Yes.
I want to move forward a little bit. You mentioned this line of credit that your mother took without your dad's knowledge.
Yeah.
Did that change, did that affect their relationship moving forward, to your knowledge?
It affected it financially, I know, and I think it affected it at some degree, you know, their trust, his trust for her. You know, I can't speak for him, obviously, but I know for sure it affected it financially, for sure.
How did you know that?
Well, he basically told me he wasn't going to let that happen again. So I assume that, well, I know he basically took away her ability to be able to do that.
Okay. What does that mean?
I'm not really, I mean, he didn't share details with me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But
What was your understanding of your mom's access to their finances?
before this happened with the HELOC, that they just shared everything. You know, it was
When you
They
say
hadn't-
HELOC, what is it that you're talking about?
home equity line of credit.
Okay, so before, you're talking about before that?
Yeah.
Okay, they shared everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember anything other than they had a checking account,
And then how did
was
it change?
husband and wife. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay. At any point, with your conversations with your dad or just over time, things around the house, did you ever learn about who the beneficiary of your dad's investments was?
No,
Okay. When did you learn all of that information?
I learned it about a year after we lost him.
Okay. I want to talk about the months leading up to your father's death.
Okay.
And at any time right before he passed, was he in the hospital?
He was.
What did you know about that?
Can you clarify?
What did you know about him being in the hospital? What information did you have about that?
I was called by the first initial, I think I got a text message from my brother saying we're taking Daddy to the hospital. And then I got some sort of communication from my mother saying, that he was in the hospital or we were taking him to the hospital.
Did you know why?
My father would have these, he would call them his spells, okay, where he would be very lethargic, almost, how can I put this? Just very, very tired, couldn't stay awake, didn't feel well. That's really the best way I can describe it.
Did you ever witness one of them?
I never did, actually, never.
How long had he been having those?
At least for a few years. On and off. I don't know exactly how long, though.
And so that was your understanding of why he was admitted to the hospital.
Correct.
When was that?
That would be April, I think early April of 2018.
Did you go visit him in the hospital?
I did. As soon as I found out that he was there, I rushed up there.
And how did he appear to you when he was in the hospital?
Fine.
Was he acting fine, or was he acting differently?
He seemed 100% okay. Like, I ran up there as fast as I could because it was described to me that he was in very, very bad shape.
Who described it that way?
My mother.
How did she describe it to you?
Basically that, you know, it was bad, you need to get here.
And what is it that you were expecting when you walked in?
I was expecting the man to be hooked up to machines and honestly, I wasn't even expecting him to be just in a general room, you know, as bad as it seemed, which I was told. I didn't expect to walk in and see my father just sitting up like, and I was very panicked. And he looks at me and he's like, what's your problem? I was like, well, I was told that you're in really bad shape right now.
I want to go back a little bit. Eventually, your parents moved out of the home in Alpharetta, the first house you moved into in 1995, right?
Correct.
When did they do that?
I could be, you know, the dates and everything, but 2014 is what I thought it was. Because it was after Halloween, because I remember helping them move, and I was trying to get out of there to go watch the Alabama game. So we were playing LSU that night. So yeah, it was right around November. I thought it was 2014 is what I thought, was what I think.
And where did they move to?
Purcell Lane, Alpharetta, Georgia, on the other side of Alpharetta. It's more the western northern corner of Alpharetta, and it's actually in Cherokee County.
Okay. Did you live with them at the time?
No.
Where were you living?
In Buckhead, at my apartment.
Why did they move out of their Alpharetta home?
It's a good question. I talked to my dad about it some, and he said, you know, it's just kind of time. And my mother and I talked about it, and I went and met her to look at homes while they were looking for houses. Before they purchased the Purcell Lane house, I would meet her, and I would go with her and her real estate agent to look at homes.
Were you surprised when they bought a hobby farm?
Yeah, I was a little bit.
Why?
Because my father always told me, he's like, well, after this house, I just want to get a townhouse in, you know, Buckhead, or, you know, so I'm close to the office and don't have anything really to take care of.
Where was his office?
It's in Midtown. I guess you would say Midtown. It's off 17th Street. It's the Wells Fargo building.
So that was around, do you think, 2014, the fall? When they
I
moved
believe so.
into
I
the
mean, I
farm?
guess it could be 2013, but I think it's 2014. Because never mind.
So you saw your father in the hospital
Correct.
in April, and he was fine.
Yes.
He appeared fine. And how long was he in hospital for?
A few days. I talked to the doctors, and they were just trying to figure out kind of what was wrong with him to cause him to have the spell that brought him that caused him to have to be brought to the hospital. So they
And-
ran some tests. I know they had a stress test and all that kind of stuff.
While you were talking to your dad in the hospital, did he enlighten you on what he thought was wrong with him?
He did.
And what was that?
He said, Chris, I think your mother is trying to poison me.
And what was your reaction?
I said, excuse me. He said, well, it's like she spent the day screaming at me, and I was watching TV in the theater room, and all of a sudden she brings me down some cookies. And I ate the cookies, and my throat started burning, and then I started feeling bad. And I told him, are you, like what? He's like, oh, I'm just probably paranoid or something. Some paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he kind of shrugged it off.
Sure.
And that's what he said.
At that time, did you know the state of your parents' relationship?
I know they didn't like each other very much.
Why did you think that?
Well, there had been different episodes, with, he had told me about a gentleman named Rusty Barton. He had told me numerous things. I mean, there was a lot of things why I thought that.
He confided in you about their relationship.
Somewhat, yes. I think he might have confided in some of the other children more than me.
Like who?
Emily, Scott, maybe Amanda. I don't know about Amanda.
Did you know how they lived physically in the home? In the farm?
Of course, yes.
And how did they live?
My father slept downstairs in a bedroom in the basement. My mother slept in the master bedroom. They still shared a bathroom. My father still showered in the master bathroom. He still had his main closet there, but they slept on different floors.
Did your dad sleep with a CPAP machine?
Oh, yeah.
Did he sleep with it every night, to your knowledge?
Yes.
I'd like to talk about your dad's birthday weekend before he was murdered, okay?
Okay.
When is your dad's birthday?
June 27th, 1960 was when he was born, so June 27th.
Okay. And was that essentially the week before his remains were found?
Absolutely, yes.
What did the family do for his birthday?
Well, we had a family gathering at the farm. Everybody was there. It was a cookout. We cooked barbecue, and Emily brought her daughter, the new baby, and it was a celebration of his birthday.
Were your daughters there?
No, they were not there.
So when you say everybody here, I have a family tree over here. Both your parents were there, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then that's you and your wife at the time, Jenna?
Correct.
Scott was there. Was Emily's husband Chris there too?
Yes.
And they had just had Olivia.
Yes.
And then Amanda was there?
Yes.
Was Chad with her?
Yes.
Was Cameron there?
I don't remember that.
What did you all do that day, that evening?
We ate. I remember Jenna and I took the RTV through the woods, and I actually ran out of gas, so I had to walk back up and get gas for the RTV, because when you took it off road, it would get kind of sideways. Well, if it was on empty, it wouldn't be able to suck the fuel into the engine. So I had to walk all the way through. She wasn't very happy with me at the time, but we walked from RTV back up to the barn to get fuel to put in it so I could drive it back up to the house.
Did you have anyone help you with that?
I don't remember. I think maybe my brother did, but I don't remember.
Were you well versed with what to do on the farm and how to work anything on the farm or work at all on the farm?
No,
Okay. Did you like going to the farm?
no.
Why not?
Well, I did sometimes, but for the majority of the time I did not. When they first bought the farm, I didn't really like going because my father would, put me to work, cutting trees down with him and things like that. And then the other reasons down the road kind of led to why I didn't like going there, which was the turmoil of their relationship, unfortunately.
Of what of their relationship?
Yeah.
Did you have turmoil with anyone?
With my mother.
Okay. When did that start?
I don't know. I mean, it's a mother-son relationship. I mean, we, had issues from time to time. But in summer of 2017, it got to its highest point of turmoil.
What happened?
Well, her and I got into a little bit of a confrontation because she was withholding giving my children back to me. My children love spending time with their grandmother, but my kids were being purposely held from being returned to me.
Do you know what caused that?
Well, she said it was because of my drinking. So I don't really know why, but I know what she said.
Okay. And how did you receive that information from her?
Not very well. I was very upset. And my kids are only here for a short period of time. I mean, they had gotten to the point where, before, when they were younger, they'd come for a couple months during the summer, and it was to the point where they'd come for a couple weeks, and then they were just spending all the time with her.
So I don't know if we've really talked about this. You moved back to Georgia, and did the girls stay in Maine with their mom?
Yes.
When did that happen?
2007.
2007?
Excuse me. Yeah, 2007.
Okay. And so when you talk about the girls coming, they would come to see you.
Right. They would be on summer break, and they would come for a couple weeks, 3 weeks, somewhere around then, and spend time with me and my family.
And they would hang out with your mom a lot?
Oh, yeah. They loved
What would they do with her?
a lot. They would spend the night. They would go shopping. They would go do lots of things that a grandmother and grandchildren would do.
When it came to your daughters, did your mom and dad, they never said no? Everything was
Oh, they never
fun.
said no. They loved Big Daddy and Grandma.
That's what they called them?
Yes.
Big Daddy and Grandma?
Correct.
Big Daddy was Gary, Grandma was Melody.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go back to this incident with your mom. Describe what happened. How you described her withholding your children. Describe what that means.
I had Braves tickets for this particular night, and I had gone to pick them up, and she basically said, I'm not going to let them go with you. And that's what happened. She wouldn't let them go with me, and there was an argument.
And what did you end up saying to her that night?
I ended up saying basically, we got into an argument, and then I actually left because I was trying to call my father. He was either at the farm or there. I was trying to get him to come up there to help with the situation, and his phone was going straight to voicemail. So I just left. Like, it was getting very heated. Like, she was very, very, what's the word? Like, very angry and just screaming at me. And I was screaming, and I was yelling back. And I just got out of there because I didn't want any part of it. And on the way back to Buckhead, my father called me, and he's like, come on back. And then I went back and I got my kids.
And what sort of words were exchanged when you were there between you and your mom?
I don't remember what kind of words. I mean, I know that I said to her the next time, I was very angry, and I said, the next time I see you, you will be in a pine box, by saying, I'm not going to talk to you ever again while you're alive, okay? Basically saying, I'll come to your funeral, but that's it, we're done. And so that was pretty harsh of me to say.
And you were reacting.
Well, she tried to
the
attack me.
situation.
She tried to hit me. And she didn't hit me, but she went like that to hit me. And I, was, 37 years old at the time. I was caught off guard by that. And I told her, I was like, if you hit me, I will defend myself. And we just were going back and forth. And I ended up taking out my camera and recording this exchange. Later on, deleting that recording, but it was hard. It was very hard.
What ended up happening when you went back? When your dad told you to come back, what ended up happening?
I came back. My kids were waiting on the porch with their suitcases, with their clothes in it, and we went home.
Who was out there with them?
My mom was out there. My dad was out there, and my girls were out there. And I was out there.
And so then the girls left with you.
Yep, they got in the back of the truck, in the back seat of the truck, and we went home.
I want to jump forward and go back to your dad's birthday weekend. That weekend, did you hang out with your dad?
Yeah.
You talked about driving the RTV. What all did the family do when you had gatherings?
Well, we would eat. All of our gatherings were focused around food, which is very, that's just how our family was, very Southern, And we would eat together. We would talk. That particular day, we had a new baby. So I remember, playing with Olivia and recording videos. It was, I had met her before, but, they lived in Nashville. So, I didn't get to see her that often. So, we were celebrating my father, but we were also celebrating Olivia.
At that point, was your mom at the house?
Yes.
So had you guys made up, rekindled? How did that happen?
Before Olivia was born, my sister had a baby shower. This was beginning of October of 2017. So about 3 months after my last interaction with my mother. I did not speak with her for 3 months. I was out. I had gotten a hotel in downtown Nashville for that weekend of the baby shower. And I was out in Nashville with my wife and my mother, Chad Bruce, and Amanda Bruce, Amanda Farris, came walking into Legends, which is a bar on Broadway in Nashville. So I went up to them and greeted them, and I actually hugged my mother.
And was there ever a discussion about what happened between the two of you?
No.
So after that, it was kind of brushed under the rug and you moved forward.
Yes.
Is that fair to say? At your dad's birthday celebration, did you and your dad plan any trips or talk about taking any vacations? Tell the jury about that.
So my daughter had come to visit in May, so this was about a month before. And we were at Longhorn, and Ella said, "Big Daddy, I want to go to the beach this summer." And he said, "Okay, we'll go to the beach." So leading up to that birthday party, my father and I had discussed going to Orange Beach, Alabama for a trip right after the 4th of July. We would be going on the trip right after the 4th of July, but that party we definitely discussed the upcoming trip.
I have a calendar of July 2018. And so when you say the weekend after the 4th of July, so the Friday, Saturday, the 6th and 7th?
Yeah, I think we were supposed to leave for Orange Beach on, I think it was Friday. We were supposed to leave to go there.
Okay. So after Ella had expressed this to your dad, were there further conversations between you and your dad about the beach?
Yeah, he told me to pick out a couple places where I thought we could go. He had given some recommendations. I had been to Orange Beach before, but I wasn't that familiar with it. I usually went to Destin. But I ended up picking a couple places, and he said, "Oh yeah, that place is good," and he booked it and paid for it.
I would like to talk about, you mentioned your dad booked for it and paid for it. Did
Yes.
your dad pay for a lot of things?
Yes.
And did he pay for a lot of things for you?
Yes.
Like what?
He would always pay for my children to fly down. He would pay for Ella's horseback riding lessons. He would pay for the girls' dance lessons, recitals, costumes. He would help me out with bills. My dad helped me and paid for a lot.
Did you have a job at this time?
Yes.
What was your job?
At the time, I had my own painting company.
So, was your dad that helpful with everyone in the family?
I believe so.
To your knowledge?
To my knowledge,
Okay. How was your dad and Scott's relationship?
they had a great relationship.
Would he take care of Scott
Yes.
financially?
Yes, Scott worked at the farm. So they kind of had Scott worked at the farm. I mean, it was a lot of work. And my brother did not have another job, and my brother had to have money to live. So I didn't know the details of it. I didn't know if they had like a, agreement of how much, or I don't know what that looked like. But yeah, I mean, I know the money my brother would be from my father.
Would you and your dad ever get in arguments about money?
I wouldn't really consider it an argument. I mean, he'd get mad at me for spending money or asking him for money, or there were even times, I mean, when I had his credit card number, I mean, then I would use it without his permission, without asking it first. And he'd get upset with me, but it wasn't an argument. It was more, he was just upset with me.
So when it came to the beach, he was okay paying for that.
Yeah, he was going with us.
And was there an agreement between the two of you with what that would look like?
I was going to pay for everything there. The dinners, whatever, things you pay for at the beach. And he was going to pay for the condo.
Did you eventually pick out a condo?
We did.
And who booked that condo?
My father.
Did he tell you when he booked it?
Yes.
Do you remember when he booked it?
I don't remember, but I remember he texted me. He said it's booked.
Was it prior to, well, it's obviously prior to the vacation itself. Was it prior to July let's say 1st.
Yes.
So it was the end of June.
Yeah.
Did you discuss it at his birthday?
He told me I had stopped and bought a raft to take to the beach because I was actually buying his birthday gift at Academy. And I called him, I said, hey, I got a raft to take to the beach. And he's like, yeah. He's like, don't talk about that while you're here
Okay. While you're where?
at the house.
Okay. Was your mom going to the beach?
No,
How do you know that?
because my father told me he was trying to get her to go to the beach and she refused.
Okay. Did you talk to her about the beach?
I did.
And what was her reaction to you?
She told me she had too much going on and she couldn't go.
Okay. So who would have, if the trip came up, who would have gone?
It would have been me, my wife Jenna, both of my daughters, Ella and Addie, and my father.
Let's talk about Jenna for a second. When did you and Jenna get married?
July of 2015.
And did your dad help you out with your engagement or wedding to Jenna? Financially?
Yes,
How so?
he helped me with the engagement ring, and he also paid for the rehearsal dinner at our wedding.
Okay. And you said it was in 2015?
The wedding.
The wedding was in 2015? Okay. So you had been married to Jenna for 3 years
Yes.
at this point. And when the girls came to visit you, would they stay with you and Jenna?
They would stay with me and Jenna, and then they would stay at the farm a lot.
The conversations about the beach with your mom, was that over the phone, in person? How did you guys discuss the beach?
Most of the conversations with my mother we spoke, but I don't remember exactly how that, if it was text messages or if it was a phone call, I don't remember.
But at that point, to your knowledge, she was not going.
Correct.
Now, after your father's birthday, I want to talk about that next week, okay?
Okay.
The first week in July of 2018. Were your girls scheduled to come down and stay with you?
Yes.
When did they come down?
They arrived at between 8 and 9 a.m. The morning of July the 3rd.
The morning of July 3rd, and that's Tuesday?
Yes.
So the Tuesday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Did you work on Monday, July 2nd?
I don't remember, but probably. I would think so, but I don't remember.
Okay. So the morning.
I mean, it was a holiday week, so probably, I don't remember.
Okay. Let's talk about the morning of July 3rd, that Tuesday. What did that morning look like to you? What did you do?
Woke up, we drove to the airport, Hartsfield-Jackson, picked my kids up. They always wanted to go to Waffle House. They don't have that in Maine. So we went to Waffle House.
Who was it that went?
Ella, Addie, and myself.
Jenna was not with you?
No.
Okay. So how long did you eat at Waffle House for?
30 minutes.
What did you do next?
We went back to my condo and
Where
hung
was
out at 55 Far Road in Buckhead.
Buckhead, okay. And what did you do then?
Just hung out. I had a dog at the time. They were very fond of Oliver. That's my dog's name, or was my dog's name. We hung out, and they were itching to do what they had what they thought planned, for their trip, which is.
And what were their plans?
Well, Addie had already arranged with Cameron, which is Chad Bruce's daughter. My sister Amanda at the time, would eventually become, I guess when they got married, or her stepdaughter, they had planned, because they, both had phones. They would text each other and, they say, oh, I'm coming down to stay with me, visit my dad, and we're going to have a sleepover at the farm. So that was Addie's plans.
Okay.
Ella's plans were she had this friend, Emma, who was the daughter of, I think, this guy named Terry, who he lived on Birmingham Highway, and had somehow my mother had become friends with him, and Emma had become friends with Ella, and Ella and Emma had talked, and Emma's mom actually trained horses at this facility up in Cumming. I believe it was Cumming. It was up near the farm, but it was, I know she lived in Cumming because I dropped her off there that afternoon. So they were itching to go. They had plans.
Okay. And none of them with you, it sounds like.
No.
They were how old?
Yeah, they were preteens at the time. They were 12 and 14 years old. Like they were very social.
They were busy.
They were busy.
So, did you execute these plans for them?
Addie's plans did not come to fruition the night of the 3rd. Mm-hmm. She had asked to do that, and I said, well, you got to ask your grandmother, and it just didn't work out. But I did take Ella to Emma's mom's house and dropped her off. She went to have a sleepover. They were actually going to sleep over at this horse training facility, and I think they had like a pool or a pond they swam in, and she was all excited about it. So we actually stopped at Target on the way up there so she could buy a new bathing suit.
Okay.
And I dropped her off at Emma's mom's house. I think her name was Beth, maybe. But yeah, I dropped her off there.
What time was that?
I'd say, if I had to put a number on it, between 4 and 4:30 p.m.
On the 3rd.
Correct.
Okay. After you dropped Ella off at Emma's on the 3rd, where did you go next?
Well, I called my father and I said, hey, do you want to meet us for dinner? Because I hadn't talked to him that day. And he said, I'm working. I say, oh, cool. I was like, well, let's meet up and get. He's like, no. I'm at the farm. I'm just working. I said, oh, okay. Well, I was like, I just dropped Ella off. We're going to come by and come see you. He had recently seen Ella because she was down in May, but he hadn't seen Addison since Christmas time. So, we were up there. Might as well stop by.
So you ended up stopping by the farm?
I did.
And about what time did you get there?
About 5 o'clock.
How long did you stay?
Between 20 to 30 minutes.
What did you do when you were there?
We pulled in. My father was in the driveway, sitting on the RTV. I parked my truck, went up to him, and Addie went to get. I just never forget it. This is the last time I saw my father. He said, "Oh, just let me give you a kiss because I'm too sweaty right now for you to hug me." And then at some point my mother walked out and we went up to the barn because I think they had some baby ducks that had been born recently or something like that. And
maybe a baby goat.
I think there might have been a baby goat. I just remember the baby ducks as being the draw that day. But I think there was a baby goat too, maybe.
Okay.
There's always babies of some sort. There were a lot of animals.
Baby animals. So you and Addie walked the property, went to the barn. Who was with you? Was your dad and mom with you?
Yes. We actually went from the main house up to the barn, and then we walked down to the pond to see the baby ducks, and my mother walked down there with us.
Who all went to the barn? All
To the
four of
barn?
you? Yeah. when
All
you
four
walked.
of us went to the barn.
How did you get to the barn?
I drove my truck up there.
Okay. How does your dad get to the barn?
He rode the RTV.
How did your mom get to the barn?
I think she walked, but I don't remember.
And was Addison with you or with your dad or with your mom?
Addison was with me, I think. She might have walked with my mom. I haven't thought about that in a long time.
So your dad was on the RTV.
Yeah,
Was he on the RTV often when you were at the farm?
all the time.
Do you know where he would keep the RTV?
Different places. Sometimes it would be at the barn. Sometimes it would be parked in the driveway. Sometimes it would be parked in the garage at the house.
But he had it often.
Very much so.
Do you remember if there was anything on the RTV this day?
Yeah. I remember seeing like dead boxwoods, I think what they were, that he had pulled up and put them in the back because we had a conversation about it.
What was he planning to do with those boxwoods?
He told me he was getting ready to burn the burn pile the following day on July 4th.
He told you he would burn it on the 4th.
Told me he was going to burn it on July 4th.
Did you see the burn pile?
I saw the burn pile the weekend before at the birthday party when I was driving the RTV through the woods.
How large was it?
It was big. I remember
What does big mean?
Big means probably as tall as I am, and I'm 6'4". I remember Jenna saying like, wow, like this thing is huge. And that's what I remember.
Did your dad burn often, do you know?
I don't know how often. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time out there. The only time I saw him burn anything was after it was like a Christmas Eve, and we had the family there, and he had taken a bunch of pallets and some wood and things, and we actually had like a bonfire like on Christmas Eve. It was actually a very, very nice evening. But that's all I really, I know he would burn things, but as far as me knowing or seeing him do it, that was the only time.
Would he burn at your old house in Alpharetta? Did you have the property? And
Yeah, he would.
you laughed a little bit there, so is there...
Well, so I laugh because my grandfather, my father's dad, every year on Christmas there'd be all this wrapping paper, okay? And every year my grandfather would take all that wrapping paper out there and burn it in his little leaf burning pile. And I always thought it was funny. And so I don't know. I always think about that. And like my father almost would talk about, oh yeah, I'm gonna burn this burn pile. And he was actually, I think, burning leaves at that house behind the fence. And so you're talking about a suburb house. I mean, this is like living in a neighborhood, not a farm. And he had actually started burning some leaves back behind the fence. And I guess didn't put it out all the way. And I woke up, I was staying with him that night. I might have been living there at the time. I don't really remember. And I wake up and there's the back of the woods is on fire behind their house.
And what happened?
The fire department came. And the fire department came.
What were your parents' reaction to that?
Oh, I don't remember. I remember. I think I was out there, and I think the firefighter asked me. He was like, "How'd this happen?" I was like, "Well," and my dad said, "Shut up," you know. I'm like, so. I don't remember what their reactions were at that time.
So the burn pile on the 3rd was large,
Very.
or at least when you saw it the weekend before.
Yes.
Okay. You didn't see it on the 3rd?
No.
Okay. It wasn't burning when you were out there, though.
No, not at all.
He was still building it?
Yes.
So after you saw all the baby animals, what did you do next?
We walked back to my truck. I remember telling my father, you know, there's going to be fireworks on the 4th of July. Maybe we can get together and go see fireworks. And
That
then I
would
got
have
my,
been the next day.
which would have been the 4th was the next day, and then I got in the car in my truck with Addison, and we went back because she wanted to go get dinner.
Did you drive back to Buckhead at that
I
point?
did.
What did you do after that?
We went and got poke bowls, which is like sushi in a bowl. Addie loves poke bowls. We went and got that, and then we went to this new ice cream place, and Jenna went with us to that.
To both places?
I know she went to the poke place. I don't remember if she went to the ice cream place. I think she did. I don't remember.
So after you got poke and ice cream, what did you do?
We went home,
And did what?
hung out. You know, I think we went to the pool. We had a pool at our condo, and just
You
hung out at
Addison,
home.
Jenna?
Hmm?
Okay. At any point the night of the 3rd, did you go back to the farm?
No.
Okay. What did you do the next morning on the 4th?
Addie and I got up very early and went up. I lived a block off of Peachtree Street, so we went up and we watched the Peachtree Road Race and come through Buckhead.
Who's we?
Addison and I. Jenna did. Jenna came up eventually, but I don't think Jenna was trying to get up that early on 4th of July. So we, Addison and I went up there. We took our chairs and set up, and it was nice.
How long were you out there watching the Peachtree Road Race?
If I had to put a number on it, maybe an hour.
So what time would that put you at?
That's hard to say. Around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. So you were done watching it at 8 or 9, or you started, or you were done at 7 or 8 in the
I
morning?
think we went up there. I mean, we didn't watch the first people come through. I don't remember what time, but I know it was early.
Early morning.
Early morning,
And you were
yes.
out there for about an hour.
Yeah.
What'd you do after that?
We went to Cracker Barrel in Norcross
Why Norcross?
because I had my own painting company and I would have my guys that I would have to pay. And I had this one guy and he's like, oh man, I really need my check. So I was like, okay, fine. And he lived in Norcross. So I went to Norcross to give him his check. And Addie and I, there's a Cracker Barrel there. And so we went to Cracker Barrel for breakfast.
And after Cracker Barrel, what were your plans for the day?
We were having a pool party, our apartment complex, condo complex, whatever you want to call it. We always had a pool party every year for the 4th of July.
So did you go to it?
We did, yeah.
Who's we?
Me, Addison, and Jenna.
Okay, where was Ella during all this time?
She was still with Emma.
Incoming.
Incoming, yes, at the horse park farm, you know.
Sure. Were you checking in on her?
Very much so, yes.
And so throughout that day on the 4th at the pool, what was your intention for that evening with Addison?
I thought we were just going to hang out and stay at the pool and just hang out at home. Ella had called me and asked if she could stay over again. I said yes. And that was my intention of the day. But that changed.
Okay, how?
My mother called me and said, hey, I'm on my way back from Lake Lanier Islands with Cameron, and does Addie want to come spend the night? So I walked over to Addie was swimming in the pool. I said, hey, do you want to go have this sleepover? Hoping she would say no.
Why?
Because I didn't want to go. I didn't want to drive up there. But she said yes. So we went.
What time did your mom call you?
Oh, I don't remember exactly what time, but I would have to say it was later in the day. Maybe I don't want to misspeak. I don't know exactly what time.
Was it evening time, after lunchtime?
Late afternoon.
Late afternoon? So you drove up there.
Uh-huh.
Did you make any stops?
I did.
Where'd you stop?
I stopped at Wendy's to get Addison dinner.
And then went to the farm.
I did.
What did you do when you got to the farm?
We pulled up, and my mom and Cameron had already arrived, and we went inside the house. That was pretty much it.
Did you stay for very long?
No,
About how long did you stay?
maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Did you see your dad?
No,
Did you ask your mom where he was?
I don't remember.
When you would stop by the farm in the past, would your dad sometimes not be there?
Of course, yes.
Was that normal?
Yeah, it was normal. I mean, I was in a hurry to get back. I had no reason. I mean, all my friends are at the pool. Addie was where she wanted to be. So I was ready to go back and enjoy my evening.
Did you and your mom speak to one another?
Yes?
Anything out of the ordinary?
No. The only thing out of the ordinary was on the way up there, because I had asked for her to meet me so I didn't have to drive all the way to the farm.
You had asked who to meet you?
My mother.
Okay.
To meet me somewhere, because she was coming back from Lake Lanier.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, why don't, instead of me driving all the way to the farm, and you're coming that way anyway, why don't we meet? She said, no, just meet me there. I was like, okay. And then I actually said, well, I'm going to stop and get Addison dinner. And she's like, oh, no, we'll just make something here. And I was like, okay. But I stopped anyway because Addison it was before we had eaten. We were cooking at the pool, but we left before the food was done. So when she was hungry, she would let you know.
She was hungry. Okay, so what did you do when you left the farm?
I went to the gas station, and then I stopped by Kroger in Buckhead, border of Buckhead, Sandy Springs, and I bought fireworks because we always shot off fireworks on the 4th of July at our apartment complex.
And where did you go after that?
I went home to the pool.
Did you talk to Addison again that evening?
On the way back from the farm, Addison called me, and she's like, we can't find Big Daddy. And I was like, well, he's got to be there somewhere. Go look for him. And I called him, and his phone went straight to voicemail. And I didn't really think anything of it because his phone went to voicemail a lot. And I just said, well, he's there somewhere, go find him, And we had a phone call, and I think, of course, I texted her that night or called her that night to check on, make sure she was okay, that kind of thing. But she was, from what I remember, was fine. I had nothing alarming from her at the time.
Did you ever communicate with your mom that evening?
No.
Is that typical?
Yes, very typical.
Even when your kids are over there?
Mm-hmm.
You mainly communicate with your kids.
Directly, yes.
So the night of the 4th, did you stay in Buckhead?
Yes.
Did you ever go back to the farm the night of the 4th?
No, not at all.
When was the next time you went to the farm?
July 5th, I think I left my apartment around 11:30 in the morning to go pick up Addison.
Did you talk to Addison before you left?
I don't remember.
Did you try to call your dad that morning?
Yes.
And what happened?
I went straight to voicemail.
Did you talk to your mom?
No.
You just decided to go up there.
I talked to my sister,
Which sister?
Amanda.
Okay, and what was that conversation?
She said Daddy's missing.
That was before you left?
I don't remember. I think it was actually after I left. I mean, I don't remember there being a phone call or a text message or anything like that to say, okay, that I'm coming to get you now or anything like that. I knew where she was. I was going to go get her. And I can't remember if the conversation with Amanda was at my apartment or it was on the way. I remember us talking a lot on the way.
Who's
But
us talking?
Amanda.
And
me-
you talking a lot?
Yes.
Okay. About what?
Trying to figure out where my dad was. I told her, I said, you need to call the local hospitals and you need to see if his wallet and his car keys are there.
At this point, knowing that his phone was going to voicemail and Addison couldn't find him the night before, what was your thought process when Amanda said he's missing?
I was pretty panicked. This was 2 months after this whole scenario of him being in the hospital. 2 months, 3 months, April, May, June, so 3 months. So I had not been able to talk to my father to get in touch with him the night before when I called him to see where he was, so Addison and them could find him and hang out with him. And then the next day, my sister calls me and says, "Daddy's missing." So yeah, I was excited in the point of panic. I was very, my blood pressure was probably pretty high.
So even though his phone would go to voicemail pretty often, this was not normal.
No, not for that long. Yeah.
How long did you know that nobody had gotten in touch with him?
Well, I know that I had tried to call him the night before, on the way back from the farm to Buckhead. So for me, we're talking, over 12, about that time, we're talking, 15 hours later, so.
And you didn't see him on the 4th at all?
No.
Okay. Did the family have any group messages happening? Like text message groups?
I don't remember there being a group message.
So you and Amanda were talking on the phone
Mm-hmm.
about, and you had said to her to call the hospitals.
Call hospitals. I also told her, because she said his car was there. And I was like, well, he never went anywhere without his car. So I was like, well, find his car keys and find his wallet, and
Why his wallet?
because his wallet, my dad never left anywhere to go anywhere without his wallet. He would not leave the house without his wallet. My dad only left the house to go to the store or go eat. That was basically it.
What about to the office?
Oh, of course, in the office. Sorry, I'm talking about things other than work.
Okay. Who did you talk to? Anybody else?
I talked to my sister Emily
On
on the
your
way
drive.
there and told her what was going on.
And what was her reaction?
She was kind of had the same reaction as me, panicked.
Had she heard from him, to your knowledge?
No.
So you arrive at the farm,
Mhm.
and what's the first thing that you do when you get there?
When I arrived at the farm, Amanda, Cameron, my mother, and Addison are actually sitting on the steps out front. I just remember going in thinking, I need to figure out what's going on. And I went out and I asked my mother, I said, hey, have you seen his wallet? She said no. I knew where he kept his wallet. Kept his wallet either in the Mercedes or downstairs in the basement or in the master bathroom. So I went to look. I needed to know if he had left or not. And that wasn't going to be an indication to me if he had left or not. I went to the Mercedes. I looked in the glove compartment. I looked in the center console. I looked in the back seat. I looked everywhere in that car. I did not find his wallet.
Did you find his car keys or cell phone or anything like that?
No, I didn't find anything. I left the garage and I went down to the basement to keep searching. And then I came upstairs and eventually took my search out of the house and, up to the barn.
Did you at any point check for his CPAP machine, or did that cross your mind?
No, that never crossed my mind.
So you were in the basement. Did you see anything out of the ordinary in the
No.
basement? So when you took your search outside, what was the first thing that you did? And who was anybody with you?
Yeah, actually, because the kids they loved to ride that RTV, and that RTV was up at the house. So I jumped on it, and they were like, "Can we ride with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, like I didn't know what was really going on here," but I let them. They're very persistent, and they jumped on the RTV with me, and I drove up to the barn to see if I could find him or a sign of him.
When you got on the RTV, you said it was at the house. What part of the house was it parked on?
He was in the driveway, I think. I don't remember exactly.
So the girls jumped on with you?
Yep,
And where'd you go?
to the barn.
Okay. Anything at the barn stand out to you?
No, everything. I mean, I looked. I mean, there's even because I thought at this point it was maybe he was having a spell, or maybe he was, God forbid, something that, medical issue had happened, and I went up to the barn. I even climbed. There's like a ladder thing. There's like a loft up there. Not my brother's apartment, but a loft where you store things in. I even went up there, like looking around, just trying anywhere. He was not there, so we got in the RTV and started back towards the house.
At any point, did Scott come down and start searching?
Yes,
When was that?
I don't remember exactly.
Was it after you arrived or before you arrived?
I think it was right after I arrived, but I can't be sure.
Okay. You didn't see him when you pulled up?
When I first pulled up to the house that morning, no, or not around noon. My first initial time when I got to the house, no, I did not see my brother. When I just saw the four of them.
So you're on the RTV with Cameron and Addison,
Correct.
and you're driving back from the barn down to back to the house.
Yep.
Okay. Where did you look next?
So I'm coming from the barn, and I look out across, and I see my brother and my mother walking between the barn and kind of the pond, but kind of back towards the wood, the tree line. And that's when it clicked in my head about that, because he told me he was going to burn that burn pile on July the 4th, and it clicked in my head, I need to go back there, because he told me he was going to be burning that burn pile on July the 4th. So I whipped around. I saw them walking back there, so I'm like, I'm going to follow them back there. I went back around the backside of the house, and went down, and they were already at the burn pile.
Who's they?
Scott and my mother.
Okay.
And I drove and parked about, I don't know, 10 to 20 yards away between the house and the burn pile. And I told them to stay back, and
Who's them?
Addie and Cameron. At that time, it was just more of, I was just walking down there to see what was going on. And I walked down there, and then my brother had a stick in his hand. And I'd walked up there, and I looked at the burn pile, just, at the time, what was about to happen. I mean, I had no inkling that this was even possible. And my brother, this is really hard for me to talk about. My brother looked up at me, and he said, "You need to get those kids the F out of here. I'm calling 911 right now." And I did. I took the kids out to the house, and I put them in the room, in their bedroom they had slept in the night before. And I said, "Y'all need to go up here." I mean, I didn't say anything to them. My daughter had just lost her uncle like 2 months before that, and I knew kind of what. I mean, I'm not stupid, like when he's looking at something, calling, like. So my instinct was get my child back up and away from whatever's going on right here. And that's what I did. I put them in the bedroom. I said, I'll be back. And I went downstairs. After I went downstairs, it's like I was just, the adrenaline was going like crazy. My brother said something to me like, I think there's human remains on the burn pile. And so I got an RTV. I had to go back down there. I went back down to the burn pile and I took a close look at the burn pile. And I looked and I was like, wow. And then I saw what looked to me to be like a hand, like bones of a hand, like that. And that's when I just, I think I went in shock. And I went back up to the house and waited for the authorities to arrive. The paramedics, I guess, is who arrived first. But I sat on the back of my truck, really couldn't even talk.
Did you touch anything in the burn pile?
No.
When Scott had a stick and moved something, did you see what it was that he saw or was looking
I
at?
thought it was a rock. I saw but he told me after I put the girls back up in the room and I came back downstairs, and he told me I think it was human remains. And of course my brother and I had conversations after, like, while this situation is unfolding, and he told me, yeah, I think that's.
Was that before or after he called 911?
After.
Did you see him call 911?
I did not.
He
said he was going to call 911. He said, to get the kids out of here, I'm going to call 911. I didn't stick around long enough to hear him.
Was your mom nearby when you?
She was standing right there.
Did she say anything?
No.
Was Amanda near the burn pile at that time?
I don't remember. I don't think so. The only thing I remember about Amanda is her walking up when I was sitting on the back of my truck waiting for whoever was responding to this 911 call to come. And my sister walked out and we spoke then. My sister was out there when the I think it was the paramedics showed up. Yeah.
What did you guys speak about?
Well, the paramedics walked by and they were actually holding a gurney. And I'm thinking, like, it was just confusing what was happening. And I was sitting there, and it wasn't long after that the paramedics actually walked back around and said to me, "I'm sorry for your loss." And that's when it really kicked in. And that's when Amanda and I just basically started this conversation about, oh my God. I mean, it doesn't take, it's common sense. Your father's missing. My brother's saying he thinks there's human remains. He's, paramedics are showing up. So, and then they're saying, I'm sorry for your loss. And that's when it really just I was just overwhelmed. Like, it was awful. I don't really remember what my sister and I talked about. I remember her kind of saying things like, oh, we put him through so much, and we weren't the best kids, and this, that, and the other. And I remember thinking, like, what are you talking about? It was very strange to me at the time, but people, I guess people say things when they're put in that situation. I didn't really think anything of it, I just thought that was kind of weird. But That's, and things just, everything, really, a lot of things after that are a blur to me. You know, I've done a lot of PTSD therapy because of this, that day, and what I've discussed in a lot of that therapy is they think that I pretty much went into shock.
Okay, Chris. I want to go and stay on the 5th for a little while and talk about a couple of things. We had talked about how you looked for your dad's wallet earlier. Did you ever see that wallet?
Yeah, my mom came walking up with a wallet after I got upstairs saying she had found it in the Mercedes.
And what did you think when she told you she had found his wallet in the Mercedes?
I thought, well, I just looked in the Mercedes and it wasn't in there. And I thought that was kind of weird because when I got there that day, she said she hadn't seen his wallet. I go to look for it, then come back to the kitchen. Now all of a sudden she's got the wallet and says she found it in the Mercedes.
Did you see her go into the garage? Was the Mercedes in the garage?
Yes.
Did you see her go into the garage?
No.
Okay. Do you know if your mom has a fear of fire at all?
No.
She's never mentioned to you how scared she is when your father burns or anything of that nature?
I think she had mentioned just things like, there was one time he actually caught the basement on fire because he put a cigarette in the trash can, the basement at the farm. And after that, she like said, well, I think he's going to burn the house down eventually. But never like fear of actual like fire. I don't remember that at all.
Okay. When you were on the property on the 5th looking for your dad, did Melody mention anything about the burn pile or about him burning? Did you ever have a conversation asking her if he did burn the pile on the 4th?
I don't remember.
Okay. So you went outside and sat on your truck. You had testified earlier. And EMS arrived with the backboard. Did you at any point leave the property?
I left the property hours later after the authorities allowed me to leave,
Why did you leave?
to go check on my children. After the whole EMS saying what they said, I called my wife who was at work and I said, you need to get here. You need to come up here. You need to come get Addison. And then I was there for a while. She did come get both the girls. Sometime during this whole thing, I think I had texted Emma's mom or called Emma's mom, I don't remember which, and said I need to get Ella.
That'd be Beth Braswell.
Yes.
Okay. And that's where Ella was.
Yes.
So Jenna came up to the farm,
Correct.
got Addison, and eventually got Ella.
Ella came to the farm, and I think it's just so foggy at that point. I think she brought Ella to the farm, but I don't think she met Beth anywhere to get Ella. I think Ella was brought to the farm because Jenna was in downtown Atlanta. So from my phone call, it would have had to take her, even if driving as fast as she could, at least at a minimum of half an hour to get there. So sometime in that time, I just can't remember if I called Beth and said, bring Ella back. I honestly, I just don't remember.
Somehow, Ella and Addison went home with Jenna.
Yes.
Okay. Did Cameron go with them?
Yes.
to Buckhead.
Yes, to my apartment in Buckhead.
So once Jenna left with the kids and you were there with your family, did anyone else show up that wasn't law enforcement? Did Emily show up? Were there friends and family?
Chad Bruce showed up. Emily showed up later that day. I mean, I called Emily to tell her what had happened.
When did you call Emily to tell her what happened?
In that time period of after EMS told me what they told me about, sorry for your loss, and I began, letting people know who needed to know what was going on.
So at that point, did Emily get in the car and drive down?
Yes.
So while law enforcement was at your house, everybody arrived, lights, all of that, did you and Scott talk?
I don't remember.
Did he mention anything about a gun?
Yeah.
When was that?
Right about that time after EMS was the first to arrive. So my brother was out talking about it, and I heard him say something about he saw a gun in the basement, something about, sometime before all this happened, and about he was having to get a remote control or something like that. And
It wasn't to you, it was to someone else.
I don't think Scott and I sat down and had a conversation one-on-one.
Okay.
I think I was just hearing what he was saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you caught that information. Did you think
yeah.
that was weird?
Yeah.
Why did you think that was weird?
Because I just thought it was weird. Like, there's a gun in the basement, and I don't know. I just thought it just didn't make a lot of, nothing made sense to me at the time, but I just remember that, like, thinking that, well, that's strange, I don't really remember what made me think that.
At this point, what did you think happened to your father?
I was going through scenarios in my head, like how, I didn't know what had happened. I just knew what I had just seen, what was happening, what was going on, and I'm trying to figure out, running through scenarios in my head, like how in the world, like I thought, like, could he have had a medical thing? I thought maybe he fell in the fire, that's where my head was at that point.
Did you talk to law enforcement on scene?
I did.
Do you remember who it was that you spoke with?
Well, specifically law enforcement, the only time really anybody asked me about like what was going on at the time was when I sat down with, and I apologize, it could be Lieutenant, I don't know police
That's
ranks,
okay.
and
Titles don't
Kaikanal or something like that. He's the one who interviewed me first
Okay, where was that?
in his police vehicle
On scene?
on scene.
At the farm?
Correct.
How long did you talk with him? Do you remember?
Oh, honestly, it could have been 15 minutes. It could have been an hour. I don't remember.
At that point, did you think anyone else had been involved in your father's death?
I don't remember specifically. I remember our conversation kind of had me thinking of maybe that was the case, because he said, well, Chris, when things like this happen, we assume foul play until we know it's not. Okay? So when he said that to me, he then asked me, did your parents, not quoting him, paraphrasing, something about how was your parents' marriage? How was their relationship? And I told him.
You told him the truth.
Told him the truth.
At that point in time, how much, if anything, did you know about Rusty Barton?
I knew a lot about Rusty Barton at the time.
What was it that you knew about him?
Well, I knew he had come to my sister's wedding
When
and
was
was
that?
dancing. It was in July of 2016. And at the reception, he was dancing with my mother. And then the next morning, my father, my brother, myself, Jenna, and my father went to Jonathan's Sports Grill in Franklin, Tennessee, Cool Springs, and we had brunch, breakfast, whatever you want to call it. And my dad was very upset about what he had seen at that reception, about my mom dancing with Rusty. And he told me, he's like, this is the last time she's going to embarrass me like that.
Did you learn if your mom had multiple cell phones?
Yes,
How did you learn about that?
my kids told me.
Did you ever see her with multiple cell phones?
No,
So when you were around your mom, you saw that her to just have one phone.
mm-hmm.
And your daughters mentioned she had a second phone. Is that?
Yeah, and my dad.
And your dad.
Yeah.
In what context did your dad inform you of the cell phone?
I don't remember. I just remember him saying something about it. I don't remember the context of it.
In your family, when conflicts would arise, like the Ted Wiley situation, would you all talk about it together or talk things out? How did issues like that settle in your family?
They were never settled. We didn't talk about those kind of things. Just kind of swept it under the rug. I mean, when my dad told me about that she was coming home from, I mean, I know where I was. I know where I was parked having the conversation with him. I'll never forget it. He told me she's coming home and you need to accept her back. And I don't know. I mean,
Did your dad love your mom?
oh, very much so.
You could see that.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that why he stayed with her?
Yes.
So going back to the 5th, you talked to detective at the time, Kuykendall, in his patrol car.
Yep.
Okay. After that, did you speak with law enforcement again?
No. I left after that. I wanted to go check on my children. I just wanted to get to my kids.
And did you check with someone
Yeah.
about leaving?
Oh, they had my car blocked in they moved the police car so I could leave.
What did you do when you left?
I went home.
And what did you do when you got home?
I went home and I hugged my kids.
How long were you in Buckhead at home with your kids?
Not very long. I just went home and checked on them, and I wasn't home very long because Emily was coming, and I wanted to be there when Emily got there.
Were you there when Emily got there?
Emily got there before I got there. I pulled up, and Emily was already there.
How many hours had passed? How long does it take Emily to drive from?
Approximately 3 to 4 hours, where they were living at the time. 3 to 4 hours.
So that's about how much time had passed since you called her and then you coming back to the house.
I guess.
And Emily was there.
Yes.
Was she there with her husband?
Yes.
And did you speak with Emily?
Yes.
Where did you end up going that night since law enforcement stayed at the farm?
I went home. I left. I know it was dark. I think I left around about the same time Emily left, and I actually had gone to get gas, and I went to run my debit card, and it said, "Please see cashier." And I was like, "What in the world?" Well, something had happened with my account. That check that I had written to that painter, he had taken it and tried to cash it when I told him, you don't need to cash this until like Friday. Well, he went and cashed it anyway, and it overdrew my account. So I couldn't get gas. So I didn't know what to do. I called Emily, who was on her way to the hotel, and she actually lent me $20 so I could put gas in my car to get home. So I went to the Fairfield Inn on, it was on like, I don't know if it was Fairfield Inn. It was a hotel, I think it was on Windward Parkway, I think. But I went to her hotel, and she lent me $20. I went up to her room and saw Olivia, and I went home.
Home to your condo in Buckhead?
Correct.
Okay. Later that night, did you get a phone call?
I did.
From who?
I think it was Detective Hayes. I think. I'm 90% positive it was Detective Hayes.
If I told you it was Detective Kuykendall, would that be surprising?
Wouldn't be surprising at all.
And what was that phone call? What was the purpose of that phone call?
They asked me where I was, they asked me some questions about my locations on like July 3rd and July 4th. And I said, well, I told them, and they asked me, is there anybody who would want to hurt your father? And I said, no, I don't think so. And then they asked me, well, let me back up. They told me that they found a bullet in my father's rib, and now this was being treated as a homicide. And there were some follow-up questions, and they asked me, would anybody ever benefit from your father being killed? And I was very frank. I said, well, yeah. I mean, my mom and whoever he's related to as far as financially. I mean, at this point in time, my brain had kind of already switched to thinking something had happened to him that wasn't falling in a fire.
Why did it switch?
Because of my mother's behavior when the police were there, and just how she was acting.
What was that behavior? How was she acting?
Just not like somebody whose husband had just been found in a burn pile. When I left, when I was walking in my truck with the detective, my mother walked up and she asked him, she said, "Are y'all about done here?" And he said, "Well, ma'am, we're not, no. He said, "Well, my granddaughter needs to stay here tonight." And he said, "Well, ma'am, we're not really done." And I said, "Mama, Emily's got a hotel room. She's going to be fine." This is before I left to go back to Buckhead. "She's going to be fine." And she said, "My daughter will stay here if I say so," or something like that. And I was like, I was shocked. And I was angry. I'm getting yelled at. My father's just been found dead. I'm getting yelled at by her. I remember I had my tailgate down. I remember slamming my tailgate. The guy moved the car and I left. I was beyond words, angry and frustrated and just I was all over the place mentally. And it just didn't seem, something was off. And so that.
So when you heard about the bullet in his rib, what was going on in your head?
I just remember crying. Like after I got off the phone with them, I just sat on the couch and me and Jenna just cried together. That's all I remember.
Did your mom say anything about money to you that night?
She had asked me, she had told me that I needed to cancel the condo to the beach.
The night on the 5th?
Yes. Well, either the afternoon, it was still daylight. I don't remember exactly when it was, but she told me you need to cancel that condo to the beach.
And what did you think about that?
I thought, that's what you're worried about right now? And I told her, I was like, well, I didn't book the condo to the beach. I ended up a few days later canceling it because I was able to find out. I think my father had emailed me the confirmation, and I was able to get the information. But at the time, that was the least, in my mind, it's like, why are we even talking about this? Which was, another reason that I was starting to think something was wrong.
So you get a phone call from Detective Kuykendall the night he tells you about the bullet, and he asked you if your dad had any enemies, things of that nature. Do you know anybody that not really would benefit from it, but that would want him dead?
No.
Would Scott have benefited from his death?
Could have. Financially, all of his kids could have,
How so?
because we're his children.
What does that mean?
That means if if somebody has money and they pass away, it, can go to their wife, their kids, whoever.
Did you end up speaking with law enforcement in the days shortly after?
Not shortly after, no.
Okay. And why was that?
The following day, which would have been the 6th, my mother was still being questioned. My brother and my mother were still being questioned. I guess they had taken them to a local precinct, maybe. At this time, when we're in frantic chaos mode, and I guess my sister Amanda had contacted somebody at Barton Foreman, and then I was told that I need to be at this lawyer's office because my mother was, I guess, still talking with them. They were trying to get her out of being interviewed with the police, and we ended up at an attorney's office
On the 6th.
on the 6th.
So that Friday, July 6th.
Correct.
Okay. And why did that keep you from talking to law enforcement?
Well, because they told us not to. Manny Aurora was the name of the lawyer, the attorney. He told us, he said, if you say anything to the police, they're going to arrest you, your mother, and your brother if you say anything to them.
That he said that to you?
He said that to me. He said that to everyone.
Who was everyone? Who was there?
Everybody. All the siblings were there. Jenna was not there. My kids were not there. But like me, Scott, Amanda, Emily. I don't remember if Emily's husband was there. But it was definitely the four of us kids and my mother.
Okay. And so they instructed you not to talk to law enforcement.
Correct.
And what did you think of that?
I thought it was strange. I just wanted to find out what happened to my dad, you know? Like, I just wanted to know. And I remember getting kind of frustrated and probably voiced my opinion about it. It was an effort by Manny Aurora to convince us that if we said anything, he told us that the police were probably lying about him being shot. And he was just like, you need to shut up or you're going to go to prison for this. And I'm thinking, I had nothing to do with this. Why do I need to stop talking? Mm-hmm. But I did. I agreed. I said, okay. I said, fine. I won't.
Now what about Addison? Since she was there the night of the 4th, was she interviewed?
By the police?
Right.
Or
By the police. We'll start with the police. Was she interviewed by the police?
no, I think Jenna had. I can't remember if Jenna. I don't think Jenna had gotten there before it had. Like, it's just so cloudy to me, like when people got there. But no, they did not talk to Addison that
Was
day.
she eventually forensically interviewed?
Yes.
Okay.
They took her cell phone.
Law enforcement.
Yes.
Okay. And that was a big deal.
That was a very big deal. She was very upset about it.
So she was eventually forensically interviewed, and you know that to mean what?
When, I mean, they flew down, this was over a year later. This was August of 2019, and Kendall Lee, their mother, my ex-wife, flew down with them, and we went to I think it was Ann Crawford Children's Center. My children went in the back and were interviewed, and we were not in there, myself or their mother. And then they came out, and that was it.
Okay. As far as you know, no law enforcement interviewed them.
No. The only thing I seem to remember was maybe law enforcement was listening to it. But there was no law enforcement there physically.
Okay. Did you talk to Manny Aurora about Addison being interviewed or spoken with?
Yeah.
What
He
was that?
confronted me about it, and he wanted me to call my daughter. This was not at the first meeting. This was we had multiple meetings with Manny Aurora. And he wanted me to call my daughter and put her on speakerphone for him and like everybody in that room to basically like confront my daughter.
Your Honor, I'm going to go ahead and object to relevance. I allowed kind of a brief reenactment of what happened earlier, but now we're continuing to talk about what a previous attorney in this case was saying, so I would go ahead and object to relevance, Judge.
It explains why he didn't go to law enforcement and eventually
He can
did.
explain what he did next without going into the content, so I'll sustain the objection.
Did you eventually go to law enforcement yourself?
Yes,
Why did you do that?
because I'd had it. I was done with. I didn't like the way that was going with her attorneys, and I was just wanted to know what happened, and I just felt compelled to help find out.
Did anyone go with you?
My brother, Scott.
Do you remember about how long after your father's remains were found did you go voluntarily with your brother to talk to law enforcement?
I don't remember the day. I don't remember the date.
Was it more than 10 days after?
I don't remember.
If
'Cause I went-
had told you it was July 26th, would that sound accurate to you?
It could. What I'm trying to think, because I went to Maine, and that meeting was either right before or right after it. So if it was July 26th, it would have been, I believe, right after I got back from Maine.
Okay. You went to Maine to see your daughters?
Yeah, I had to get out of this town.
So you sat down with what law enforcement officers did you sit down with when you and Scott spoke with them?
For sure, Detective Hayes, and a couple other ones. I think Kuykendall might have been there, but I can't be sure. There were people coming in and out. It was a lengthy interview.
Mm-hmm.
It was officers coming in and out.
I want to talk about the year that followed your father's murder. So, the next year, before your mother's arrest,
Mhm.
you eventually at some point became the temporary administrator of his estate. Can you
Correct.
tell the jury about that?
Yeah. I mean, the farm was basically, there were financial problems. I mean, the farm was potentially going into foreclosure. I mean, there were things going on. My mother was openly trying to say we need to get the death certificate and like all these things. And Emily and Scott and I decided we needed to do something as far as, because they froze all my father's accounts. There was nobody who could use any of that money, and somebody had to do it. There were discussions back and forth whether Amanda was going to do it, and there was at this time a very hard divide in our family. And
What was that divide?
well,
Who was divided?
my brother Scott, my sister Emily, and I on one side, and my mother and Amanda on the other. My mother was not living, but still had kind of a relationship with Amanda.
What created the divide?
Well, a lot of things. I mean, it was my mother was very much so telling us that we needed to help support her, that we needed to give her money because my father had supported us and given us money all these years, and that we needed to, in turn, give her money. To speak of my situation, and I just had my suspicions that she had something to do with this.
So there was a divide in the family. You eventually became the temporary executor of the estate, administrator. And so when you were in this role, did you learn who the beneficiary was of all your dad's assets?
Yeah. I was actually visiting my kids in Maine, and Barry Bishop sent me an email saying that my mother was on the life insurance and the 401k.
Eventually, did someone else get appointed the administrator of the estate?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
Was that a contentious area among the family when you were appointed?
Yes.
How so?
My mother was not happy about it.
How did you know that?
Well, the day that I was officially appointed, and she had learned about it, her and my brother got into a pretty bad, I guess, argument or something like that.
You weren't there.
I wasn't there.
Did you and her ever speak?
Yeah.
How did you speak with her?
I
Was it-
called her. It wasn't too long after that because I was getting, not directly from my mother, but through Amanda, basically saying, you need to do this with, because they thought I had access to these accounts and I didn't. What happened was when I was named, because there were bills, there was the mortgage, there was a condo in Tuscaloosa, Alabama that my dad owned, that I wanted to start making these current. I didn't want those things to be foreclosed on or go away, and so when I was named temporary administrator, I immediately set up a meeting with his personal banker. And she said, okay, come down here, we're gonna have a meeting. I get to the meeting, she meets me in the parking lot, she's like, Chris, our legal team said a temporary administrator is not enough for me to give you access to your father's funds to pay for anything. From what I remember, that was either not believed or just maybe they didn't know that. And I called my mother to tell her that I can't do anything. I don't have a checkbook, I don't have a card, I don't have access to money. I can't. I have nothing to be able to pay these bills.
When you became the administrator of the estate, what was your role? What was your duty, your job, your oath?
My duty was to preserve the estate.
So be conservative with, try to save as much as you could.
Yeah.
Is that what that
Mhm.
means? So let's go back to the phone call with your mom you had mentioned. What was that?
I called her and I said, I can't. I said, Mama, I can't do anything. I can't. And I did. I said, just please tell me what happened. I was like, there's no way you know. Or excuse me, there's no way you don't know. If all this happened like they say, there's no way you don't know about it. And then she hung up with me, and I think that's the last time I've talked to my mother ever. I mean, that's the last conversation that I've had with my mother, period.
Did you ever confront your mom about any of her affairs?
I'm sure I did. After this all happened, there were at that point text group threads for the family. I would get very angry about some of the things that were being said, and I would throw it out there like, well, you know, are having this affair, you know, XOXO, which was some name for Rusty's name on her cell phone, and I would like text it to like just.
Did
out
you
of
ever
anger.
confront her face to face?
I don't remember that.
After everything that happened, you had already mentioned your PTSD therapy. When did you start doing that?
Well, I started doing that.
I would object to relevance as to PTSD therapy.
I'm sorry?
Response?
Oh, it goes towards the aftermath of all of this and the family, how it's affected the family.
It has nothing to do with the facts in this case.
I'll sustain it.
Did you ever get to have a funeral for your father?
No,
Was that a contentious area after his death?
for me it was.
All right, I asked the lawyers for a sidebar and it quickly got beyond what we needed to talk about at a sidebar based upon the ground rules that I had set for that previously. So let's start that whole conversation over. So we had questions to the witness about the family being contentious after, based upon an issue with the funeral. I think Mr. Weaver was about to object, but before the witness could say anything, I stopped him. So we'll go from there.
And that's correct, Judge. It sounded as if he was getting into some of the issues that were the natural part of the delay of this case. We had expert witness issues insofar as examining the remains, and to somehow say in a reply that needed to be stopped before that got started. Also, I think it sounds like the state's going to try to also discuss something about the contentiousness of the funeral, insofar as my client wouldn't pay for the funeral, but they've already stated that she doesn't have any money to pay for anything anyway. She had no access to funds, so ultimately it's not relevant.
All right, Ms. Frankish.
Judge, the motive of this case for this defendant is money. The fight and the argument that I'm wanting to get through the witness is that shortly after his death, this is well before Ms. Farris's arrest, well before the defendant's arrest, before the remains and the release of the remains even became an issue. The family met at a funeral home to plan a funeral. The package that Emily had picked out, the defendant did not want to spend that much money on. There is a call that we are going to play later on, a recorded call with Rusty Barton, where she talks about, why do you need a funeral? There's nothing left, basically. So it loops back to the motive.
Right.
And
here's the problem. When you ask him about him being upset about not being able to have a funeral, he's not going to just want to talk about what you're wanting to talk to him about. He's going to want to talk to about the fact that, as far as I know, they've never had a funeral because the remains were at the crime lab forever, and then COVID, and so longer, and then expert witnesses need to work on the remains, and then we had an expert witness die, and then we had another expert witness, and all the other issues that have come up over the course of the trial that have led to the delay. Now, if y'all want to craft some kind of explanation for all that we can give the jury, I'm happy to do that. But he's going to go into all that other stuff, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do to stop him from doing it. Now, you can instruct him, and when he goes outside the specific instance at the funeral home that you want to talk to him about, I'm going to call him down in front of the jury, and I don't want to have to do that. So if y'all can contain your witness to just that conversation and those issues, that'll be fine. But I don't think that's going to happen.
okay, Judge.
All right.
Judge, can we just have 1 second? Judge, I think you may have a way to,
All right.
based on the course instructions, we just maybe
Yes,
just a
Judge.
little
That's
bit-
fine.
I'll just ask
And-
very specific questions.
All right.
And allow some lead just on these.
Yeah, that's fine.
We need to crack it real quickly.
All right. We'll take 5 minutes. Y'all ready to go back on the record?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Farris, I'm going to let the prosecutors talk to you about this area of questioning they want to go into next with you We're gonna end up breaking for the day, and we're gonna take up this topic tomorrow. Now, Ms. Frankish is gonna give you some very specific questions, and I don't want you to go rambling about other issues. I know that you are upset, and I know there have been issues with the family and the funeral and the remains and the delay of the trial and all those things. But we don't want that in front of the jury, okay? Because that's just going to be rabbit holes we don't need to deal with. So I understand to the extent that there was a confrontation or whatever this couple of incidents that Ms. Frankish wants to go into you with, that's fine, but let's don't go beyond that. So
Yes, sir.
stick to that area. You
Yes, Your
understand
Honor.
that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, also, this case is ongoing. Don't talk to any of the witnesses overnight. Don't look up anything on the internet about what's going on with the trial, okay? All right, anything else we need to talk to him about? Is
No,
that-
Judge, we'll meet.
Is that fine, Mr. Weaver, Mr. Ray, as
It's
far as
fine.
instructions? All right, you can be excused. We're gonna go ahead and break for the afternoon.
Okay.